In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create two working awesome portals inside of Unity. These portals are super customizable. You can actually change the colors, the shape, how fast they spin. You can also add particles to these if you want. And the best part is the portals actually work and you can select locations to teleport you. You can even pick different locations so you don't actually have to spawn at another portal like you can see here, or you can spawn in the same portal. You can set timers for how long it takes to actually get through the portal and a bunch of other stuff. So without further ado, let's actually start getting into this tutorial. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how you can customize these portals. You can see we have two different portals here and teleport locations which are customizable. So if we select portal 1, which is the green portal over here, we can change its color. You can see it's fully customized. You can change its color, you can change its brightness. You can even just change its shape by changing the strength of the portal. You can see how much that makes a difference. And if you turn this up, you can get some crazy effects. You can also turn this down to like a 1 and get these sort of more of like a void, a rip and tear. You can go to a 3. We can also change the scale, which actually just changes the scale of the texture. You can even go down. Can start changing this up. You can see all these crazy portals you can create with this sort of method. And if we mix these up and like change these to, let's say, a 10 and that, you can see you can get some really cool looking portals. You can even speed it up so it starts going crazy, or slow it right down. Let's just say 0.1 so it's a nice sort of smooth. You can change the dissolve. So if we put this at 5, you can see it actually dims it down a bit more. We can change it to about 0.5, which makes it really bright. 1, even 2, which gives you this more defined portal as well. So there you go. So these are all the customizers you can do. You can even mask these portals. So if we just go like this, you can see we can change the portals to look however we want with these different styles here. Put these in there, UI sprites. You can literally put any sort of element in here that will work. Let's just put none. And then let's just change the scale to be about 1, this to be 1, and the dissolve to be about 2. And you can see there we're getting some sort of pattern. Let's make strength 5, maybe even 10. And you can see we start getting that pattern back. You can go 5 here, and there you go. You get more of a squared portal there. You can change this up to fit any shape you want with just a simple mask or sprite. So we can just add in the default particle system. And there you go, back to a normal portal. So that's what we're going to be building today. I hope you're excited. If you are, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and let's actually get into creating a new Unity project. Okay, so as you can see here, we're going to create a new Unity project. I'm using Unity Hub 3.4.1. I'm going to be using Unity version 21.3.11, the LTS version. You can use, I'm pretty sure you can use anything that supports shader graph, and we are going to be using 2D URP for this tutorial. This shader also works in 3D as well on quads and stuff like that. So if you want to use this shader, you can as well. And actually, I'm pretty sure the portal code will also work as well. So this could be used in 2D and 3D. Let's just call this portals tutorial, portal tutorial. Portals tutorial, doesn't matter. Click create project, and that's going to create a project. Once that's loaded up, we'll get into the actual tutorial. Okay, so the project has now loaded. Let's just turn on the grid so you can actually see it, and also the gizmos. And let's just set this to an aspect ratio of 16:9. Just for convenience, you can change this to whatever you want. For me, I just like this view here so we know what we're working with. So now we have all this in our sample scene. You can see what we've got in here. We're just going to change the main camera to be a darker color just because it works better with the shader, the light, you know, having a bright light on it. Now, what we're going to want to do is actually create a shader first. So we're going to create our shader, and then we're actually going to do the functionality. So have a look down below for timestamps on this. If I don't add them, just remind me and I'll add them in. All right, so let's go down into shader graph, URP, and we can use a sprite unlit shader graph to actually get us a sprite shader graph. And in here, we're just going to call this the portal. This will just be our portal shader, and we can open shader editor here. Okay, so now we have this. I'm actually going to full screen this, so I'm just going to click maximize, and that will bring this to be full screen, and we can widen this and move this over there. And there we go. Now, I'm going to make our preview a little bigger just because it's be nicer to actually preview this. And we can right click in. I'm just going to click quad because that's what we're going to be previewing this as. Because this could also be a sphere, just so you know. So I just prefer to change it to quad or even sprite. either one will work. Let's bring this down. So the first node we want is a twirl node. So if we search for the twirl node, you can see here we have this already good looking swirly twirl node here, which kind of looks like a portal already. But we're going to want to animate this and other stuff as well. So once we have the twirl node, another node to multiply this by, or just convert this into, is a a noise node known as a Voronoi. I cannot pronounce that, I apologize, but there you go. And we're going to make sure this goes into the UV join here, and you can see here we now have a even better looking swirly portal, which is in black and white, which is perfect. So we can change the cell density here, which you can see changes how this portal looks. If we would set this to, let's say, 2, we get more portal. We set this to like 10, you see we get some crazy sort of like black hole style effects. But we're just going to set this as 2 for default. And then what we're also going to do is mess around with the strength. So you can see here we can change the strength for this to kind of like scale it up and down, bring it in, and you can get some crazy sort of portal looking effects here. I'm just going to leave this at 10 by default. Now we actually want this strength to be a variable we can change in our graph. So I'm just going to drag this out here and create a float node. And we'll just set this to 10 by default. And then we can right click and convert to a property, which will bring it up here. Now, if we double click this, we can give this a name. I'm going to name this the strength, just to correspond with the actual name there. So now we have our strength that goes into our twirl into our Voronoi. And there you go, we've got this. Now we can just take this pool and drop it into our base color and also the alpha as well to get a portal effect straight away, which is pretty cool, but this doesn't animate and doesn't really do anything. So how can we animate this? Well, we can multiply this by time. And to do that, we're just gonna add a new node called time, drop this in, and we can actually just attach this time node into a multiply. And there we go, bring this over there. And then we want the second one to actually be a float again, which will be the speed property. So let's just set this to something such as 0.5. We don't need this preview there either. 0.5, which is default time. I'd probably even say 0.2 is a good. And then we can convert this to a property again. Double click it up here and call this speed. This will be the speed of how fast the pool actually spins. The lower the value, the slower it goes, and so forth. Now we can put this into our offset here, and you're going to immediately see the portal animating. That's how easy it is. You can have a portal like this super simply, but we want to make this much more complicated, much more easy to use with some more customization, such as sprite masks and stuff like that. So let's actually add in the next one. Now from our Voronoi, we want to actually have a power node. So I'm going to drag this into a power node, and we'll just put this into A. And there we go. So this power node, you can see, will control the amount of light that is let through. The lower value, obviously, the more light that will let through, the higher value, you can see it takes away the light there, which is pretty cool. I'm going to set this as 1 by default, which basically just means don't minus or add any one. And we can drag this into another float node, which we are going to call, we're going to set this to 1 by default, convert to a property node, and then we can rename this to the brightness. Brightness over there, and there you go, that's in there. We can also delete these nodes from here just for now. We can see the preview here. Bring this over here. You'll probably want to organize this better than I am. I'm not great at organizing shader graphs. Let's just bring this back, and there we go. So we have our power node and our actual brightness. We can drop this straight into our base and alpha if we wanted to. But we're going to we want sprite masks and other stuff like that as well. So how do we get a sprite mask? Well, we want to create a new texture 2D, call this mask. And in the mask, we can set a default one for now as the default particle system, which I think works really well, and it's built into Unity so everyone can use this texture. It works really well with the portal effect. It makes it circular and fades out. So now we can take this mask and drop it into a sample texture 2D. I'm just going to minimize the actual part there. There we go. And then we can actually multiply this with another sample texture 2D. Now the sample texture 2D we're going to multiply it with, if we create it, it's going to be the main text. Now this is actually, you don't have to do this, but it's required for for sprites that you're using inside of Unity. So if we drag our main text in here, this reference needs to be exactly underscore main text, and I'll show you why in a moment. So we can drag this into another sample node 2D, bring this up here, and then multiply this. So multiply A, multiply B, and there we go. We've got our sprite there. And then we can bring this into our power node. So we can add another multiply. I'm actually going to delete this and move this into A and this into B and A. And there you go. You can see we're actually applying the sprite mask. Now this doesn't look too great here right now, but I'll show you it will look a lot better once we actually use it. So let's bring this up here, bring this multiply. And again, we don't need to actually see that reference there yet because we'll actually use it. We'll put this up here and we'll move these over here again. Now, once we've done our multiply, we want to multiply one more time, and this one is actually going to be our color. Now, I'm just going to leave this at color, and I'm going to drag this to the top, so it's actually the first thing we change. Now, what we want to do with our color is actually set it to HDR, so we can actually add glow and intensity to it to make it look like it's actually glowing. So make sure it's HDR, and I'm going to set this default as white, but we can actually set it to red or whatever and up the intensity. I'm going to put the intensity by default at 8 because that gives it a nice glow effect. So let's just drag this and drop this in over here. And above this multiply, we can then multiply one more time. So we can have a multiply here and a multiply there. And there you go. You can actually see that multiply happening. And then finally, we just want to drag this into our base and our alpha, and that will now export it out there. Now, let's just go back from the start, just so I can quickly go over this. So we have a time multiply, which is actually animating our offset of the twirl, which we have a strength that we can also change and mess around with. I like leaving that at 10. We have a speed, which we can mess around with. If we put this to 1, you'll see it moves a lot quicker. I like about 0.2. I think that's a nice sort of portal speed. But there's one more thing we need, and that is the actual cell density. So let's drop this up here, create one more float, and put this by default. I'm going to say 3 or 4, sorry, 3. 3 is probably good. 5 looks even cooler. Let's leave it at 5 by default. Change this to a property, and this one will be called density. Now we can bring this up as well. I like to bring that up there. Brightness can go under our color, strength, speed, density. There we go. You can order these however you want it to appear in your shader. I just like to make sure it's appearing in a certain way. And we can bring these up here. There we go. So now we've got that. We've got our strength, density, and brightness all combining into a power, which we then mix with our mask, which is actually going to be the texture we mask our thing with. Normally a circular, but the particle, we actually got it set to default, the default particle, because I think it creates a nice little circular motion there, which is really nice. And there we go. And then we'll multiply our color. Now let's just quickly change the color so you can actually see this working. And there you go. You can see how nice that actually looks down there. Leave it at white. And density, not density, brightness, let's set this to about 2. So this is a bit misleading because brightness may make it sound like how bright it's going to be. However, this is the opposite. The higher the value, the lower the brightness. Just so you're aware. And there we go. That is our shader done. That's as simple as it actually is, and that's all you need to do. So what we're going to do is save this asset. We can then unmaximize our screen, go back to our scene, and let's just create a simple 2D object. We can just create, let's say, a square and call this portal 1. We will set this to minus, like, well, you know what, for now we'll just set it to like -3, so it's over there. Let's just make it a bit bigger, say 2 and 2. And then let's actually create a material for this. So on the portal, right click and go create and material. And that's going to create as a shader graph material. We can just drop this straight on our sprite there. Now, the reason I told you I was going to explain why we needed main text. Now, the reason for that is because the main text takes off whatever the sprite renderer is. If we go back into our portal, we go to main text and just name it main text like that. There you go. And then save as and go back to scene. You'll see we get this warning. Material does not have a main text property. It is required for a sprite renderer. It means if this wasn't a square, this would render a different, whatever shape we put in here, it would not reflect in our shader and it would not work. So we just want to go back here, go back to our main and just rename that main text. And there you go. Save asset, and that will just make sure we get no warnings in our actual scene. And there you go. We've got an awesome looking portal. Now I want to rename this to, let's say purple portal. Right, and now we're going to change this to be more of a purpley colour. So up there, let's bring it around a bit more purpley, and I think that's pretty good. Let's put the intensity to about 8. Save. Let's put the brightness up to about 3. No, maybe even 1.5. Strength, we can mess around with this, so we can make it go really crazy, and you can see this sort of effect going on here. Let's just sell it to 20, 25, and the density to about 10. Or maybe even 2. 3? 2 looks pretty cool. Let's go 3. Again, you can mess around with these settings yourself. I just like messing around with them in here just to see what we can come up with. And that will be the purple portal. Let's duplicate this, and let's just say we want a red portal. Or no, we did a red in the one. Let's say a yellow portal or orange portal. Just coming up with random colours now. Well, let's bring this around there and start messing around with this. Obviously, we can't see this effect in there. Let's duplicate this and call this portal 2, and we'll just pull it to 3 so it's on the other side, and we'll give it the orange portal shader there. And I kind of want the density or the brightness to be lower. No, higher, 1. There we go. And we'll make this, let's say this will go 10, maybe even 5, and we'll make the actual density 10. Yeah, I like that. That looks pretty cool, actually. And I'm going to lower the intensity of this, probably to about 7, just slightly lower. Bring this up a little. Less blue. Oh, not too little blue. Say 5. And there you go. I think that's a pretty cool looking portal right there. And there you go. We now have 2 different portals we can actually use. But one thing we need to do in these portals is now actually make them work. They currently don't do anything, which is pretty useless. Now, how do we actually teleport between these things? So what we want is a new, call this a box or circle collider. Basically, you just need some sort of collider on it. We'll make that 0.33. Yeah, just so it's just in the portal. And then we've got set to is trigger. We also want a rigid body 2D set to static, or you can, if you want the portals to move, you can set them to kinematic if you want. But if you're not moving them, I suggest setting them to static. This just makes sure when we collide with it, the trigger will actually be called. And there you go. So we've got our portal on there. Now, we just want to actually create the portal script. So you can call this portal or teleporter. It's up to you. These are more like teleporting. You're not actually stepping through a portal. In 2D, you can't really step through a portal too much. But here we go. So in our portal, if we just double click this to open it up inside Official Studio Code or your preferred text editor, we can actually work on the portal. So I'm going to delete everything in here. Okay, so now we can say serialized field, private float, time to teleport. And we're going to set this as a default of 1 second. So this actually, in rough seconds, how long you want it to take to teleport when you enter the actual teleport. Now, you can have this instant. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it as soon as you enter it, you teleport. But I like doing it this way because if you make your teleporter teleport you inside another portal, it won't teleport you back straight away. This just stops any issues, but you can obviously put this at 0 or even just a smaller. I normally do 0.1 if I want it to be pretty instant. This just gives it a nice little set. We're going to do 1 for demonstration purposes. And then I also want to serialize another private transform, and this is going to be the portal teleport location. Now this is going to be a transform where we want to actually teleport to. So we can actually tell it where it teleports. So it doesn't have to teleport to another portal, but, you know, we just want to throw something in there. So there we go. Now let's create 3 private variables, and we're going to say teleport timer. Now this is just going to be the actual timer, what counts down. This one just is like a default value, which we set to this every time it runs out. We then want a private bool called isTeleporting, which is going to tell us once we've entered the trigger, we're then going to count down our timer. And finally, we want a private game object, which is going to be equal to the player that's entered the portal to be teleported. Let's go down to start. And the first thing we want to do is say teleport timer is equal to our time to teleport. This just means it's going to be set straight from the start to what we actually want it to teleport to. We're then going to go in our update function, and we will actually say if we have a player, so if there's a player in our trigger and our isTeleporting is true, that means we're actually teleporting somewhere. We then want to check for if our teleport timer is greater than 0. This just basically says if this is greater than 0, then actually count down. So we want to say teleport timer minus equal to time.delta time. Now, if you don't know what time.delta time is, it's, as you can read there, the interval in seconds from the last frame. It basically just kind of calculates, if you do this, you're kind of minusing in seconds or by your actual time scale inside of your settings. If that's confusing, I apologize. And then once we've actually run down, so once this gets below 0, what we want to do is actually teleport our player. So we just want to go in here and say private void teleport, and then in here we can say the player dot transform dot position is equal to our portal teleport location dot position. This is just going to move our player to the portal location we want to teleport to. Once we've teleported though, we need to reset our timer. So we need to say teleport timer is equal to time to teleport. So that just resets our timer back to whatever one we've got up here, 1 second. We then want to say is teleporting is equal to false because we're no longer teleporting, and we want to set the player back to null. Now we need to actually work with our triggers. So this is just the functionality to actually teleport. We need to actually know when the player goes into our portal and out of our portal. So we want to say private void on trigger enter 2D. For some reason it's doubled up on my private void, that's fine. And then below here, we're just going to say if other.compare tag, and this is where we're going to add a tag to our player when we create him. We're going to say is teleporting is equal to true, and player is equal to other.game object. So this other will give us whatever's gone into it, and if it's equal to player, we want to tell our portal that we're ready to teleport, and the player is equal to the game object that is which was collided or entered the trigger area. And there you go, that's all we need for this. We then need one more, which is going to be on trigger exit 2D. So if we leave the timer before it teleports us, we want to check if, basically we want to copy this. We want to change the player to be null. That means the player has left the area, and the teleporting needs to go to false. We then also want to say our teleport timer is going to be reset. So this here is just if we leave the portal before the timer gets to 0, we're just going to reset everything so we can actually start teleporting again. And there you go. That is all we need for our actual portal script. So let's go back to our C# here, or sorry, Unity, and wait for this to compile. And now our portals have compiled, you can see we can actually set some stuff up. Now, I'm going to set the time to teleport a bit higher. I'm going to set it to 3, and then I'm going to set our teleport location to the other portal. Now, you don't want to do this if your teleport timer is too low. You don't want to do this. If you know how Minecraft works, for example, when you enter the Nether portal, it takes a few seconds before you teleport. And then when you teleport to the Nether, you're still inside a Nether portal. If you stand in that portal for too long, you will then teleport back. And that's kind of what this does. If we set this to 1 or even 0.1, it will be too quick for us to leave the trigger zone. And then we will be teleported back and forth uncontrollably, which isn't what we really want. So let's just change this to be 3 seconds. That gives us enough time to enter and leave each portal. And what we want to do is just move this to somewhere else. So let's just bring this to, the Y can be equal to -3 or even just 0. We can do it up here. We now want to create our actual player and a ground. So let's create a square, a 2D sprite square, and just call this the ground object. Let's make this 0 and -1 and bring its width to about 20 and add a box collider 2D. You can mark this as static because it is static, but you don't have to. And I want the pools to be rendering above this, so I'm just going to change the order in layer to -1 there. And you can see the pools actually spawn above it. In the game asset, it looks a bit better there. Or we can just move this ground down slightly, -1.5, and then they'll be above it, which I think works better, actually. We'll leave it at that. Now, let's put our portals slightly further on this. So let's just bring it over here, and this pool over here like that. And there you go. And now let's actually create our player. Now, this is going to be a super basic player. If you want to learn how you can make your own 2D platformer player, I actually have a series on that, and I will try and link it down below. If not, hop on my channel. It's called 2D Platformer, and you can learn how to create a really cool character controller. But anyway, let's change the player color just to something a bit less standard. We'll make him bluey purple, something like this. There you go. That should do. And let's just change the square's name to be player. Now, we need to make sure he is tagged as player because that's going to be where we actually teleport to. And let's just say it's 0.5, just to bring him on the flat here. And then give him a box collider 2D, a rigid body 2D, and you can leave this as is. And finally, we just need to give him a player controller. So just say player controller, new script, and create. And this is going to be a really quick script. I'm not going to add jumping or anything. This is just to demonstrate the actual movement. So I'm just going to give it a flow mx. We're going to have a rigid body 2D RB, a float of speed, which is equal to 5 by default. In the start method, we're going to get our component of rigid body 2D. Again, I apologize I'm going really quick through this bit. It's just not relevant to the actual tutorial, really. Get axis, and we'll say horizontal, which is use the old input method here, or the old input system, because it's quicker to use. And then we will add the fixed update, where we'll just say rb.velocity is equal to a new vector2, which will be mx times speed, and rb.velocity.y. Now, I'm just going to quickly explain this so it's not all a mystery in case you do want to learn how to do this. We're creating a float called mx, which just stands for movement on the x. It's basically where we're going to get our input. We're then getting our rigid body that we've applied to our player. We're going to set a random speed variable, or not random, we're going to set a speed variable. We're going to get our component that's on our current game object, the rigid body 2D, and set it to this variable. We're then going to go to our MX, and we'll just, in our update, if we press A, D, or left arrow, right arrow, it's going to get the horizontal input axis, and it's going to give us a value of either -1 or 1, meaning left or right. And then we're just going to apply that as a velocity to our rigid body on the actual player here. So we're going to say MX times it by the speed, and then just give it the same velocity, so it always uses the velocity. And here we go. So that should just work as is. We shouldn't have to do anything. It should just all work by default. Now let's hit play and see if our portals actually work. So we're in our game. If we go for it and now wait 3 seconds, we should teleport over to the other portal. You can see that now. If we go back here, we wait 3 seconds, it teleports us to the other portal. Now you can actually mess around with this and make this a lot cooler by adding in a few different things. Now, one of the things we can add in here is a volume, a global volume, and then we can actually just reset that, create a new profile, add an override for post-processing and bloom, and just turn on bloom and set its intensity to higher. And there you go. You can see it's kind of adding in this glowing effect to our actual portals. Our portals look really cool. You can lower this if you want, or you can make it really intense. We can mess around with our actual portal styles. If we went to our orange portal and changed the strength to 100, we get this really crazy portal there. So let's play it again, and let's actually see the portals, how they look in game. Or for some reason, it's not applied the post-processing to our actual camera, because we need to go in here and turn on post-processing. Now you can see it's in our actual game view there. And if we go back to our portal 2, we can set this portal to, let's say, 0.1 in terms of teleport, and our other portal to 0.1 as well. Now this will break the game if I try to enter a portal right now. We're actually going to create a marker for our portal. So let's say portal 1 location. Reset this and give it a icon of, let's say, yellow. Now where is our actual icon? It's probably behind all this. It is. So our portal 1, we want it to just be near the other portal. We'll set it to 5. We'll then duplicate this and call this portal 2 location and set this to -5. So there are our 2 portal locations. We go back to portal 1 and drop in the actual location 1, and portal 2 and drop in the location 2 and hit play. We should now jump in a portal and get teleported almost instantly, as you can see there, with our velocity still applied straight through. And there you go. It actually looks like we're coming in and out of the portal, kind of, which is super quick. So if you want an instant portal, you can do it kind of like that with this as well. So guys, I'm going to leave that there. There's so much customization you can do with this. You can make this look even cooler by adding in particles that spiral off this. But I'm going to leave that up to you to look at and actually play with and mess around with. You can even mess around with the actual shader graph as well if you want to try out different things and try and make it look even cooler. Feel free to go ahead and try that out. But for now, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps. Smash that subscribe button if you're new around here. We create tutorials and videos, devlogs, and game-related stuff all the time on this channel. So don't forget to hit subscribe so you do not miss out. Ring the notification bell if you want to be the first on the scene. If you want to join a friendly game dev coding community, or you need help with this project because you get stuck or you have any issues, hop in my Discord server. The link is down below. We help everyone out if we can. And we try our best to reply to comments and whatnot there. If you want to get me to respond quickly, it's better to catch me on Discord than it is in the YouTube comment section. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.